Welcome to the Creative Brew, helping you keep your creative juices brewing. We're giving out chunks of insight, motivation, and practicality for your creative journey. My next partner is Elevate Coffee Trading, and if you appreciate specialty coffee, enjoy outdoor adventure, and love helping elevate the lives of children around the world, then you're going to love Elevate Coffee Trading. Their mission is to extract hope through love, coffee, and adventures. There's free shipping in the United States, and every bag of coffee helps sponsor health and education for children in coffee producing countries and in areas of need in the United States. You can use promo code Elevate21 on your next order, and you can follow their journey on social media at Elevate Coffee Trading. Or you can visit online at elevatecoffeetrading.com, and let's start extracting hope together. And this episode is brought to you by Baba Coffee, smuggling good vibes. Baba roasts their coffee beans each week and only offers the freshest coffee. They have espressos, lattes, cappuccinos, pour over, or drip coffee. You can try their cold brew coffee, nitro cold brew, or bulletproof coffee, and boba milk teas. They also have a wide assortment of delicious food. I would suggest you try the avocado toast, mimosas, wine, or beer. On the weekends, you can check out some great music like the Soto Six and food like Eliza the Shelf and others over the weekend, every Friday and Saturday, beginning at 6 p.m. You can check out everything they got going on Facebook and Instagram at Baba Coffee. All right, and welcome to a new episode of the Creative Brew, giving you insights on your creative journey. Today we have Albert Bramante. He is a talent coach, a talent agent, as well as author of Rise Above the Script. And he's going to share a little bit about what he does. And this might be specifically, maybe you're looking to get into the acting industry, or just trying to become a personality. This might be the episode for you. So we're going to dive deep into what goes into it. The mental barrier, especially for people that's looking to get into acting. Everything associated with that. There's a lot of little things, not just acting. A lot of it has to do with your mindset. What you believe about yourself. The self-sabotaging, making sure that you're worthy and you're good enough to actually do this, and everything in between. So this should be a really really cool episode. And but I want to introduce Albert, and I'll let him sort of share his story, quick origin story, and we'll start the show. So Albert, thank you for jumping on.
Well, I really want to thank you for inviting me and for allowing me to be a guest on the podcast. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy to share whatever knowledge I can and whatever answer any questions that are needed. So a little bit about me is I work with actors. I primarily work as a talent agent. That's what I do my day to day job. So that means I find work for professional work for actors in film, television, theater, commercial written voiceover. I also have a background in psychology, a PhD, and so I was able to write a book last year, Rise Above the Script, which is all about confronting self doubt and mastering self sabotage for performing artists. And so my goal for the book is to help really actors and creative people overcome any self imposed blocks, self doubt, and kind of get out of your own way. Because that's what I found in my experience was working with actors for the past 20 years, 2 decades, is I found that a lot of actors are in their own way. And I think a lot of creative people can sometimes get in their own way
Yeah.
and be their own worst enemy at times. And so that was like the reason why I created and wrote Rise Above the Script, so that you can rise above the self-imposed scripts in your mind. Not necessarily a script as far as like a document or that you would read, but I'm talking about a script that you run, that your internal mind goes through every day.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good. That's something that I know definitely even as a creative myself. I mean, those are things, those scripts that continually and the really almost revising that script every day, but trying to get yourself in there and giving yourself the right story to know, hey, look, um, you're capable of doing the things that you're capable of doing. And sometimes, and I feel especially with my young creators, I say it all the time with a lot of imposed limitations. In your opinion, why do you feel like that is? I know just as the creative community, we're naturally, I mean, we're able to act and write and sing and create all this amazing stuff. But when it comes down to maybe opportunities or maybe putting ourselves out there, why is that? Why do you feel like that limitation is there?
The limitation, there could be a variety of reasons, but I would say primarily it has to do with fear. And it could be, not to get too psychological, but if you grew up in an environment where your creativity might have been stifled a bit, where you grew up, let's say, a controlling family or controlling parents who were like, you had to think a certain way.
Mm.
And if you express creativity or any type of thinking that was outside of the particular norm of that family, you might have been castigated or labeled as being, odd or, not being serious. And so, as sometimes as a way of survival, our subconscious says, "Okay, I'm going to block you now from accessing your creativity. Really, you want to be creative? I'm going to keep you safe in your particular family." So that could be one reason. Also, there's a fear of sometimes being judged. Like if I put this creative content out, how are other people going to judge me? How is the other world going to see me? So therefore, I'll play it safe, and I'm not going to be as productive as I could be. And then there's another thing. I talk about this more in my book called Fear of Success, and that's not when people may hear that in the beginning and think, well, how could someone have a fear of success? That's what you want. But the truth of the matter is success can be scary at times because that means change. That means more responsibility, more pressure sometimes being added, and your life is going to change, or your relationships may change, and other people in your life may be threatened by your success, may feel threatened by your success. And I've seen this a lot with the actors I work with. Sometimes their family or their close, loved ones, like others, are not very supportive of their journey
Yeah.
and or try to shoot their journey down. And I feel a lot of times that has to do with their own insecurity, talking about the family or their loved ones' insecurity, that over time, because relationships are so important to us, I mean, we're actually wired to be connected with other people, so we do care about what other people think. And so, a way to keep us safe from that is again to hold us back.
Yeah,
So,
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean I, I I think you're right on the point with that. I mean, I think people I think there are people that I think there's people that do crave, that like they want to be a, successful creator or actor, and they're really ambitious, and you do have those people that, like they want it, but the thought of them leaving the conformity of what they've been at or where they've been at or family, friends, environment, that's scary too. How would you, I mean, for I mean, maybe for you, or maybe like helping out actors, or maybe people helping out people maybe trying to get to that next level, what's been some things that you've used to help people bypass that? Because that's interesting.
yeah. So, a way to kind of get through that is, first acknowledge what's happening too. Because the thing with self sabotage, the thing with the fear of success is most people don't realize that that's happening. They don't realize that this is something that I need to go through. And so what winds up happening is a lot of people think that, they may run into issues of what's happening, why can't I do anything right, and not realizing that they in their own way. So the first step is realization that this is happening. That's the first step. The next thing is to look at the language you're about to use to yourself and to other people. So the one thing that I feel somewhat in society has been romanticized, and that's the idea of the starving artist or the struggling artist mentality. And I'm not sure how or why, but that's been romanticized now. It becomes like, oh, I must be a starving artist to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, what you're doing is you're kind of setting the tone for being empty or being inauthentic or not being full on things. And so, what can happen there is you start to internalize the message of being poor, about being, you know, and just living that life, and it becomes part of your identity. So, and identity is very strong. The one thing that, as human beings, we cling to comfort. And so, one way to kind of start to break out of that is do something that makes you uncomfortable. So, taking some, you don't have to necessarily do anything outlandish but start taking some actions that are maybe a little bit scary initially.
Yeah. What would be one for you? I mean, what's something like maybe you've helped out with a specific actor or what or maybe one of your students. What's been one that's like where you've made them get out of their comfort zone? I didn't know if there was something that you've done
Going to
specifically.
networking events, especially if they feel like they're introverted.
Yeah.
Go to an event, meeting people. But what I can tell you, and I've been part of, like, even education events. Like, I went to a public speaking training, and the first day, the first exercise I had to do was to do something outlandish. Like, uh, walk around outside, doing something silly in public. You know, and so that was very helpful. Another um, idea that I often think is great is going to karaoke,
Yeah.
especially if the type of person that doesn't want to sing. I think you should do it because that'll, once you do something that's uncomfortable and scary, your confidence builds up,
Hmm.
and therefore it's like, well, if you did that, that wasn't so bad. That was actually liberating. What else can I do?
Yeah, that's the truth. Yep.
And so that can sometimes, be holding one back, in a sense of just not, of stepping, not doing anything you fully could do. So stepping outside your comfort zone, doing little actions. If you're a little bit of camera shot, putting yourself, putting a camera on your computer and going live on social media.
Yeah. And I think that's been one of the big things too. I mean, even with a lot of not necessarily actors. Well, I don't know, maybe with actors, but even, I know on my end, more of the more traditional artists. A lot of them are trying to promote themselves on social media, and like I don't want to be on camera though. I don't want to be on camera. So it's always that stigma, like I don't know if it's like afraid of how they look, or them are afraid of messing up or putting themselves out in the world. Yeah, it's a weird little scenario. I mean, especially the more that social media and AI, everything else hits us, we there is
Hmm.
still a group of people still afraid to implement those things and put themselves out there more.
Oh yeah, and that's the main thing too. You just really have to put yourself out there and really do things and really move forward. So that's what I often tell is that's number one. It's doing something different because a lot of people want their life to change, but they don't change anything. And if you do the same thing over and over again, your life is not going to change until you start making some changes yourself and changing your environment, doing things differently. That's the only way you're going to see your life change.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah,
I think which is not just creatives or just actors, but if people are feeling stagnated, it may be time for a change. And I'm not, it doesn't have to be drastic. It doesn't have to be huge or monumental. Small steps, small changes over time.
yeah. That's good. That's good. I know you had talked to briefly about about the starving artist, and I know there's a I hate to paraphrase because it was a book I read not too long
Mhm.
ago, but talked about it. I don't know if it was called the Starving Artist, but it was something along the Starving Artist, but talked about you know that that's been, like you were saying, been romanticized. And and that's a stigma that even when I started, like when I was young, like, oh, he's gonna be a starving artist, and like you hear that so many times. And now you find yourself, even with me, I find myself like unlearning all that. And and I
Hmm.
see people that I wouldn't say not as talented, but they found a way to connect with the audience and doing really well. So it's like there's no excuse to where, like, okay, that could be anybody, that could be any of us. If we tap into the right audience, and we put ourselves out there, we share our story. Um, we can connect with our with our audience, with the people that that vibes with us, and create a sustainable practice. And I think that's what I would want for anybody that has those talents and abilities to do those things. Like, I want you to like be successful.
Yes.
Like, we don't have to struggle.
Yeah. No, and most people don't really want to struggle. But another thing that I ran into, go back to my book, is there's fears of money, and sometimes negative views about money that can hold us back. So depending on the environment you grew up in, you may have been told inadvertent messages that money is bad or that money is evil. And one of the quotes that I feel is very often misquoted is "money is the root of all evil," and that's been misquoted because it was actually that the quote was the love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself. But I think if you internalize that viewpoint as money is evil or that greedy, and it's associated with greed, that we then, our subconscious mind says, okay, I want to protect you against being prosperous. And so therefore, I'm going to stop you from and protect you from being a bad person, from being a greedy person. So let's stay poor. Now,
Yeah,
of course, consciously you don't think that way, but that's what's happening. And so any chance that you can possibly become successful is going to get thwarted or stopped because of that protective mechanism. So that has to go with unlearning, as you said. You have to unlearn things, and that is views about money, and that money is really neutral.
yeah,
So that can hold us back, and so that may be something we may have to explore from working with an artist or anybody who's has to deal with money blocks. Is what is stopping you? Because that's why you see a lot of people, even some athletes or even celebrities or artists, they come into like a major windfall of money, or even lottery winners, and then 2 years, 3 years down the line, they're in more debt than they were previously
yeah,
because they just threw it away. They didn't know how to handle it. It became very scary, and then therefore the subconscious mind says, "Okay, you have this money, now you get to get rid of it, and get rid of it, and get rid of it fast." And so that's why I feel a lot of people go broke too fast because they don't know how to handle it. It's scary to sometimes handle that amount of money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's wild. It's that can be. I mean, sometimes if we're not aware of those scripts, we're not aware of the things that sort of underlying in our subconscious that's continually running 24/7. And we don't find ways of, like you're saying, find ways of like acknowledging it, understanding it, and then trying to work on overriding it. We'll keep going through those same little patterns and cycles forever. And the way we can be the most talented people on the planet, but if we can't override everything that's going on in our brain, then we're going to continue to struggle, continue to get the roles, or get the opportunities, or maybe not get the opportunities. I'm sure in your case, you've seen a lot of people, maybe they've self-sabotaged and missed out on opportunities that they felt like maybe they felt like they were good for, but some way or another they end up like not getting the audition, or not get the role, or not getting those opportunities. um what's been like, what's been one of your, and I said you don't necessarily have to elaborate too much, but what's been like one of your best case scenarios with like some of your students?
Well, it really depends on so the important thing is stepping into your power and realizing your power.
Mm.
So one of the actresses I represent, I'm not going to mention her name, of course, but um, she was as an actor for like 9 or 10 years before we started meeting, and she was when you talked to her off camera, she had a very powerful persona to her, gravitas, a nice person, but tough. She had a very tough, persona. However, when she was acting, it became very meek, so soft spoken and timid because I think it had to do with some of the blocks that she was experiencing. So through an traditional acting class, I'm not an acting teacher or an acting coach, but I'm a more of a working with mindset, more of the emotional side of things. So I kind of helped her through her acting connect to her power and just boost her confidence up. And once she's internalized the tough, powerful, heart of gold persona that she was off camera, like she started booking work and speaking roles like right her once it really clicked, she had an audition for a speaking role in Orange Is the New Black, and she booked it.
Well,
So and then right after that booked FBI, and then obviously soon after that booked a spot on Law and Order SVU. So it really depends on just stepping into your confidence and stepping into your ground as a performer and your voice and trusting your voice, because that's a big step too as an actor. Yeah, it's great that you can internalize characters and read very well and perform very well, but you also have to believe it. You also have to be comfortable in that shoes too, because that's going to come off in your performance. Is if you're not completely secure in what you do, and so that's why I feel like sometimes getting some work done, whether it's mindset work or I'm also trained in hypnosis and NLP, and part of that is sometimes overcoming limiting beliefs that and working with your subconscious mind to overcome those limiting beliefs and master them. And so that's sort of like the type of work I would do is help someone work with their limiting beliefs. And I think as part of like the human experience, I want to emphasize that it's completely normal to have these beliefs. So it's completely okay. That's and even with self doubt, I mean, there's no way that anyone's gonna lead a life without having moments of self doubt. That's what makes us human.
mhm.
That's what makes us humble and have humility. However, the point is not to let it hold you down and hold you back. And so that's where sometimes this type of work can come in and help you move from point A to point B.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's yeah, definitely yeah, learning, keep helping people how to trust themselves. That I think that's one of the big things. Even as a creator, is like trusting our process, and being really trusting ourselves, being authentic with ourselves. I think there's been a lot of creators that they create a lot of amazing work, but if you had to tell them to explain your work or sell this artwork to me, like everything just sort of just shuts down and like I don't want to do this. Speak to my agent. So I think learning how to trust ourselves. I mean, we've been given all these creative abilities, like learning how to trust that and putting that
Yeah.
out. I think once we change that energy up, I think other people feel that.
100%. And it's learning to just trust yourself and trusting your instincts.
Yeah.
And that comes with just having the confidence to know, okay, I've trained. And I think that's also adopting rather than the starving artist to the thriving artist or the working professional artist rather than the starving artist, because that when you identify start forming the identity of thriving and professional, you now can trust your instincts a lot more. It makes a huge difference. Just that simple identity shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree on that. Definitely agree. That's yeah, I think just changing our changing the identity, change the way that we we see ourselves. And I think that's constantly evolving. It's one of those where like sometimes you feel good about opportunity, like feeling good, and then something happens, you sort of go back and revert, and then getting trying to reset, be more courageous with some things. Yeah, I think that's one of those where yeah, that's going to be a ongoing process. And I think people, and I'm sure with your students, I mean, I think some, they may feel like, hey, we do one or two classes, and with you, and like that's it. And it's like, no, I feel like even what I'm sure working with you, like that's got to be an ongoing process. Like you have to
Well,
constantly.
it's well the same thing with anytime you're pursuing anything, we're a work in progress. It's going to take time and time again to do it, and you just have to keep doing it over and over again. And that's the important thing. It's about being consistent in a sense and doing things on a consistent basis. So, and yeah, one or two sessions is not gonna may not cut right away. It's just beginning.
Mhm.
It just and it's an ongoing thing. It's something that you have to do on a daily basis. So one thing that I think is very powerful too is visualization.
Mhm.
So constantly visualizing yourself being successful. Having that, you know, booking that role or booking that, you know, engagement. So there's a one of the most well-known actors of our time, Jim Carrey. If you ever followed his story, when he was kind of like a broke, up and coming actor, he had wrote himself a check for $10 million way before he had the money in the bank account, and he dated it for 3 years ahead of time. And he every day he would keep looking at that check and kept visualizing himself having that kind of money and living that kind of lifestyle. And he did this every day. And it might not have been exactly 10 million, but around that time, he had, 3 years later, he was offered the role in Dumb and Dumber, which really catapulted his stardom.
Mhm.
So, and he attributes that even to this day to that constant visualization. So it's not, and there's a lot of other examples when you visualize yourself being successful. Now, again, I'm not saying that everyone's going to be make $10 million, but however, you can if you do this on a daily basis, not just one off or one time, and you also have to believe it. Now, you can see things in your mind, but if you don't believe it and you don't connect to it, it's not important. Because the interesting about the human brain is it does not know the difference between fiction and reality. So just like you can, you know, worry yourself sick, you can also do the opposite and do this for good, for a good thing. So that would be something that I would really encourage people to do is what's your goals, what's your passion, and what do you really want, and just sit for 10, 15 minutes a day and just meditate into that and picture it and visualize it. Imagine yourself in a movie theater watching this happen on screen to you,
Yeah.
and to do it over and over again.
Now, now?
But
And I'm going to ask you especially a question here, because I felt like even when obviously there's been a lot of actors, specifically, Jim Carrey, heard that story. I'm like, wow, oh my Lord. Um, and him going through the process of like going back, not and sort of visualizing that before he even saw that in his bank account. Now with social media and with I feel like there's a lot of people that they want it right now. Um, what what do you how do you combat that resistance? Like, say you're telling a student, it could be, especially some of these younger actors, you're telling them, hey, look, you need to block out this time to just focus on, like, let's get into the space, let's get into that energy, let's visualize, just think about what, feel how you want to be in that situation. And but you have social media and you have all this input sort of hitting them, and creating that resistance to allow them to actually focus. How do you combat that?
well, I would combat them, by saying like, really to kind of like not be so much on social media all the time because especially now that we have the world at our tips, it's we expect to be given everything instantly, and it doesn't work that way. Even the stories that you hear in our, especially in my industry, the overnight success story, what you don't often hear is that it took them 10 or 15 years to become an overnight success. So it's a process. So it's more about the journey, not the final destination. It's a journey. So to be a professional working actor takes years. It can even take decades. So one of the things I even look at some of the well-known actors today, and kind of point out to a lot of the young actors I work with, you often will see that they've been doing this for years before they got their first role that made them change. And it's going to take at least 10 years or 10 or even 20 years to work fully before that can happen. And I think especially not to get too, this is going to showcase my age, but I think Gen Z is like, I want it now. I want this thing now. And there are some people who, and I think it's great, but where they became millionaires by being TikTok and Instagram influencers. That's great, but not every journey is going to be the same. And the one thing that's important is each person must take their own journey
Yeah.
and not necessarily be the next, actor. So, and that's one thing I work coach actors too, work with actors too, is that you're not going to be like anybody else. You're not the next Denzel. You're not the next Meryl Streep because there's only one Denzel. There's only one Meryl. You have to be you
Mm.
because that is different. So you're not gonna be that, and that's why sometimes even myself as an agent, I won't represent an actor who isn't fully comfortable in who they are. Don't compare yourself to celebrities. And then you could say you have the influences of, or maybe a mix or a crossover, but you should never say, I'm going to be the next Denzel. There's only one Denzel, and there will only be one Denzel. And
Yeah.
that's a good thing. If there's not going to be one you, there's not going to be another you. So, and a part of that is just really trusting yourself. And that goes back to trusting yourself and trusting your instincts.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So right now, I mean, what are some creative tips that you can provide for our audience?
Well, I think creativity is number one. Don't force it. I mean, a lot of people sometimes be like, okay, this is my time to be creative. Sometimes it may you may not get the inspiration a day. There may be moments you do get it, and anytime you force something, it's not gonna work. It's gonna come off as half done or not adequate. So sometimes taking breaks, sometimes movement helps, like going out for a walk.
Yeah.
And I've had sometimes where I've been like stumped with a problem, and I would sometimes just take a walk and immediately, oh, I didn't, and I wasn't even thinking about it. A solution just popped into my mind, and I went back to it. So that would be the first thing. Also, this is even though it's not necessarily related to creativity, it does help creativity. Surround yourself with other creative people. Uh, I'm gonna borrow from like Tony Robbins and Jim Rome, who are really good motivational speakers over time. Proximity is power. So if you want to be creative, a good idea is hang out with other creative people. I'm a big advocate, especially really cultivating creativity in children, and that means exposing children to different types of mediums, art, music, dance, and just get them to be creative from the beginning. So expose yourself to creative things, see new things. Go out and see the movie, or go out and see a play, or go out and see a musical, or even an art exhibit, something you may not even think you may want to see.
Yeah, that those are some awesome tips. Yeah, I know you definitely nailed it. With sometimes you gotta sort of get away and like go walking. I know that's been a really big thing for me. Like either like some kind of movement. Anytime that I'm thinking on an ideal, or a lot of times I got a thousand things sort of going through my brain. Like I love to move. I love to exercise or go for a walk. When that happens, whatever solution I was looking for, it pops right in. So I was like, you nailed it. Whatever you said walking. I love doing it. Me and my wife, we usually go walking on the beach, and that's usually I get a lot of my best inspiration and everything from
Mhm.
doing that. And
Yeah,
also
well,
too, even with exposing the kids, I've got a little niece and nephew, and anytime I come back on the East Coast, I'm always taking them to the art studios there and letting them draw, letting them expose themselves to art, and they love it. They always, one of them said they want to be a little professional artist, and so it's one of those where like I want to expose them to all kinds of things, and not
of
really,
course.
yeah. But yeah, those are some great tips. Great tips. Um, so right now, what would if you had the power to go back, what would you tell your younger self right now?
I would probably say it's not to take life so seriously, and I would also really stop. I would tell myself to not care what people think and to just live my truth.
Yeah, yep, that is yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's yeah, I always think about, especially go through like middle school, high school, and not sometimes conforming to the crowd, and
Hmm.
not being your own person. Um, yeah, definitely. That's a good one. That is a good one.
Yeah.
Um, and then and before we sign off, like I say, I mean, you throwing on a lot of a lot of great information, especially for creators and artists. What are some words of wisdom that that may resonate with our audience?
Well, I would definitely say like what I would say is trust your instincts and really trust that intuition, within you, that gut feeling. It's there to protect you on level. So listen to that, and I would say live your purpose. Find out, discover your why, and live that. Because when you live authentic and live the truth, it's one of the things. One of the great quotes that I've heard about from Stephen Covey, one of the best-selling author, Seven Habits of Effective People, was, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I may not know it verbatim, but it was the loss. It's not so much that we're so worried about identity theft, but the biggest scary thing for us to do is live a life or live somebody else's life, like being, denying our own dreams and living to please other people. That's the biggest loss of identity, not identity theft. That's true identity theft is when you don't, when you live a life that is not authentic to yourself because you're trying to please other people.
Well, yeah, 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 you stop doing that. That's great. Yeah, when you stop doing that, and you live your own life, you become a freer person. You're able to
Hmm.
put out more when you're coming from that belief about yourself and your authentic self. Not to please other people, not to you know you know conform to somebody else. Like, who do you want to be? How do you want to create? um that's the most freeing thing. That's something only I feel like right now a small percentage of people are capable of doing right now. Hopefully more, but I think you know hopefully people get a chance to sort of be their authentic self, and in any way, form, or fashion, before they pass on this earth. I hope they get the opportunity to do that. That's a great one. That's a great one. So right now, before we sign off, share with our listeners like how they can get the book, how to maybe if they're an actor, because I do talk to I do have some actors that listen to the show. Um, like how can people get connected with you? How can people
Hmm.
get your book? You go ahead and you can share all that out.
Sure. So there's different ways. I highly recommend the book. So you can get that on Amazon. and it's available as a paperback, also as an ebook and audiobook. We're on Audible and Spotify, so where your major audiobooks are at. The book is available in audiobook format. There's also, I recommend going to my website, albertbramante.com, and I also have a lot of MP3s that you can download for confidence building, for leadership. So they're available to purchase. And then you can also go to bramanteartist.com if you're an actor, and there's a form on the website to submit for representation. And so I recommend, to do that, and even say you listen to the podcast, and then therefore I'll take notice. I do look at every submission comes in.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, that's something that yeah, that'd be good to know, especially when this episode releases. So there are some actors that I do know, and so yeah, it's really great information. And even for people that's trying to get in that, acting or theater or anything like that. That this is an awesome resource to have. So I'll definitely put that out once the show releases. Well, Albert, thank you once again for coming on. This is an awesome episode.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, no problem. Probably so much really more than we probably could have talked about with psychology and everything else. But I think for right now, I think this was a great episode for creators, for people in the creative community, people that's just trying to create their authentic self, trying to live from their authentic truth. This is an episode you might need to check out. So thank you once again, Albert, for coming on to the show. Thank you for my sponsors of the episode. Baba Coffee, that's based in Carlsbad, California. Smuggling good vibes and good coffee. You can check them out at babacoffee.com. Elevate Coffee Trading, based in the Dallas, Texas area, and they're extracting hope with every drop of coffee. You can check them out at elevatecoffeetrading.com. And then my art partner, Studio Ace Arts. They're a arts initiative and community that's in Oceanside, California, and they're providing events, workshops, classes for kids through adults and trying to help people find their inner youth. So you can check them out at studioacearts.org. If you want to donate to their call, there's a donate option on there too. So those are my sponsors for this episode. So Albert, thank you for the show. And once again, this is Be Creative Crew. Be creative, stay inspired. All I know is hard work, really nothing else. I resort to smoking weed, yo, cause nothing helps. Called the homie up, told him loot the sample up. We gotta come together now, cause I had enough. The time is now, there'll never be another one. It's a second lap.